Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 93. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video, we are going to be going over sticky situations with Dipplin. And if you're wondering why the thumbnail is so good, I just thought Sticky Situations would be a really funny podcast where it was like a Dipplin, like listening to people's problems and trying to solve them. It's like a 2-minute long story of a person going over what's going on in their life, and then Dipplin just goes like, Dipplin, 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 Dipplin. And the other person on the other side of the phone is like, I have no idea what that means. But Dipplin is, well, I guess it's technically not unique anymore because it got an evolution in the Hydrapple, but the reason that we are using specifically Dipplin today is because it has the Eviolite, and the Eviolite suits it a little bit better more than Hydrapple for what we're trying to do today, and today's strategy revolves around the move Syrup Bomb. Now, Syrup Bomb is a 60 base power move, so it's not very strong, and it's also 85% accurate, which means that it's also not very consistent. But the effect that we want from Dipplin's Syrup Bomb is the ability to make the opposing Pokemon syrupy, which whenever a Pokemon is syrupy at the end of the turn, they will lose a speed stat. So we can use that with our own Pokemon, but also we can apply it to the opponent's Pokemon in order to make them slower. The rest of our Dipplin moveset is that we're going to have Pollen Puff so that we can side heal Pokemon, but also have a decent move to hit Pokemon. Like, the purpose of Dipplin is not really to hit Pokemon for damage, except to maybe pick off like a Focus Sash or something, but having the Pollen Puff to side heal, but also to attack something with a Poke-type move is pretty nice. And we have the Dragon Tail in case the opponent is trying to set up in front of Dipplin. We can use Dipplin in order to Dragon Tail them out in order to get rid of them. As well as Dipplin also has the Super Sweet Syrup ability, which means that once per battle we can afford to lower the evasion of the opponent, and that does benefit a good number of the Pokemon that we have here. And we're going with the Terra Electric on Dipplin just because I couldn't pick out a specific Terra type that I thought would be great for Dipplin, except maybe Poison. But Electric at least makes sure that you're only being weak to ground and that you can maybe keep Dipplin on the field for long enough. Next up we have Bronzong, and Bronzong can benefit from being hit by Dipplin's Syrup Bomb because it is a steel type, so it will resist it. But on Bronzong we are also using the move Gyro Ball, which will gain more power the slower the user than the target is, and because we're also using Trick Room with Bronzong, it benefits our Bronzong to be extremely slow so that we can power up our Gyro Ball, but also so that we can be the very first Pokemon to move inside of Trick Room. And with this Bronzong we're going with a tankier set where we have the Iron Defense in order to increase our defense, and then use that increased defense stat with our Body Press in order to deal massive fighting type damage with Bronzong and hopefully Bronzong kind of end game here. We also have the Leftovers in order to keep Bronzong alive for a long time, and we are Terra Fire because since we are Levitate we don't have a ground weakness on Bronzong, and Fire is just a good type because the thing that we want to be slower than in Trick Room is Torkoal, and if we can't afford to be slower than the Torkoal we at least want to try and resist the eruption, and then maybe use Altaria's Cloud9 in order to get rid of its sun so that Bronzong can survive and then get off a Body Press into the Torkoal in order to mitigate its effects. Next up we have Superior, and Superior benefits from being hit by the Syrup Bomb in the opposite way of Bronzong, as we are a contrary Pokemon, so instead of getting a speed drop every turn due to the Syrup Bomb, we will get a speed increase every turn, which allows Superior to outspeed pretty much everything in the format after we get off that first speed boost. As a matter of fact, we probably don't need to have this much speed investment on Superior, but it is nice in case we can't afford to bring Dipplin to be able to outspeed things, so I guess I'll actually stay with how much speed investment I have on the Superior. But our Superior is mostly intended to do grass type damage, as we have the Leaf Storm, which is the main thing that you use with your Contrary in order to increase your special attack, and we have the Giga Drain in order to stay on the field for longer, and we have the Miracle Seed in order to boost the power of our grass type attacks. But for things that we can't afford to hit with grass type attacks like fire types, we can afford to hit them with our Terra Blast, and then whenever we use our Terra Water with Superior, we will get Terra Water, Terra Blast. Up next we have Volcarona, and this is mostly a support Volcarona, as we do have that one massive overheat to throw into a Pokemon if we need to try and get rid of it or deal massive damage into it. But on this Volcarona we have the Struggle Bug in order to lower the opponent's special attack to make it so that our mons are a little bit tankier, especially Bronzong, who only has the ability to increase its defense stat. And we have the Rage Powder in order to redirect attacks into Volcarona to maybe activate its Flame Body on the Pokemon that's trying to use a contact move into Volcarona. But if the Flame Body doesn't go off, we also have that flat-out Will-O-Wisp option in order to hit the opponent. And another benefit of Dipplin Super Sweet Syrup with the evasion drops is that a good number of Pokemon on this team have moves that are not entirely accurate, like Serperior's Leaf Storm and Volcarona's Overheat and Will-O-Wisp. So we won't have to worry as much if we use Dipplin's evasive ability in order to land our moves here. And we're also Covert Cloak on the Volcarona just so that we are not getting faked out flinched most notably, and we're Terra Dragon because Dragon gets rid of all of our weaknesses basically. Next up I decided to slot on Altaria, mostly because I wanted to do a cheeky thing where we have Serperior with Contrary and we have the move Defog. And normally Defog is used a lot in singles in order to get rid of hazards because hazards are much more valuable there. But we can side use Defog on the Serperior in order to increase its evasion. So if we start stacking boost with Serperior getting the special attack boost and we throw some evasion onto Serperior, it can add some variance into the game that is more in our favor. But also we can just use Defog for the evasion drops for the previously mentioned moves that aren't guaranteed accuracy. As well as we have the Breaking Swipe on Altaria in order to lower the opposing Pokemon's attack, and we have the Fire Spin in order to try and lock them in, since once Dipplin makes a Pokemon slow or lowers its evasion, we want them to stay in for a while, and hopefully Fire Spin will allow us to stall a Pokemon long enough to where we can switch in the right Pokemon that we need in order to check the Pokemon that is currently on the field, and they will be unable to switch out because of the Fire Spin trapping them in. And also we just have the Roost on Altaria to give us a little bit more of a Stallia option, but also gets rid of our flying typing whenever we use Roost kind of quickly, which can benefit us sometimes. And the main thing that we have Altaria for is the Cloud 9, which I kind of mentioned before, which will negate the weather that is on the field, and there is a lot of weather in the format being used, so having Altaria to negate the effects of weather is very beneficial. Also, the Altaria is going to be safety goggles so that we are not being affected by powder moves, and we're Terra Steel because Steel allows us to resist things like Dragon and Ice that we were previously, and Fairy that we were previously weak to. And lastly on this team, I decided to slot on a Garganacl, mostly because I wanted a Rock type, but I really wasn't quite sure what Rock type would be a good 6th Pokemon for this team. It was almost Cleaver until it wasn't Cleaver. But we're going to have a whole team focused on using Garganacl Stall at some point towards the end, so I didn't want to get into Garganacl Stall too much here. It's just that we do have some kind of fairly stally components in Dipplin's Pollen Puff for Garganacl and Altaria's Fire Spin, trapping in Pokemon that we hit with our Salt Cure in order to deal an 8th damage to them each turn and maybe watch them die over time. So we're using Garganacl here in order to add to the stalliness that this team already has going for it. Not so much because we're using the stalliness for Garganacl, but Garganacl has some good supporting moves in the Wide Guard in order to decrease the damage that is being dealt on the field, and we can recover for ourselves in order to give ourselves more health to increase our staying power, and the Protect just means that we get to save ourselves for a turn basically, as well as Purifying Salt is just a really, really good ability, because it's basically 2 abilities, because it halves the damage that we take from Ghost type moves, but it also means that we cannot be statused at all. And with the Citrus Berry to buy us a little bit of extra health, and the Terra Poison on Garganacl should be pretty good to go. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. So first up we have what looks to be a rain team with mostly support and maybe Trick Room mode, as they have the Sinistcha and the Blood Moon Ursaluna. Did I say Blood Moon? I think I did that last video too. I just keep resorting to automatically saying Blood Moon Ursaluna. That is very obviously a regular Ursaluna. But the battle starts out and we lead Volcarona and Altaria into their Archaludon and their Dragonite. Not seeing the Pelipper here, unfortunately, as I really would have liked to try and chip that a little bit while it doesn't have its weather active. But we swap out Altaria here because I want to safely negate the weather next time, and we overcoat the we overheat the Archaludon, and it looks like the Archaludon is Assault Vest because it doesn't take as much damage as I would expect if it wasn't Assault Vest. But now we have Bronzong in here pretty safely, and they decide to side Scale Shot into their own Archaludon here in order to activate their defense boost, which is all well and good, as Dragonite takes a defense drop but a speed increase, and Bronzong takes the body press here, and at least we get to Iron Defense with Bronzong, as the Bronzong lives the body press. But we whisk the Will-O-Wisp into their Dragonite, which is what I really wanted to get, because we can just always use Rage Powder to redirect away the body press from the Archaludon. But they decide to swap in Sinistcha here in order to Hospitality up Archaludon, and we redirect with Volcarona, which it does crit Volcarona, but we burn them back on the Archaludon, and we get some body press damage into their Archaludon, which is going to max out their defense boost that they get. We Rage Powder with Volcarona again, but they decide to smartly Snarl here, which does take down Volcarona, but does not take out Bronzong. And Sinistcha just goes for the Life Dew as we get off another Iron Defense with Bronzong here, and I think I actually meant to click Trick Room, which means that this was a bit of a misclick here, but they decide to Terra Bug their Archaludon here, and they Body Press Dipplin, but they don't get to take out Dipplin, and they Life Dew for their Sinistcha, so we get to side Pollen Puff up Bronzong and Body Press their Archaludon, so Bronzong is now back in play and has the defense boost in order to keep up. They're just snarling with their Archaludon, lowering our special attack, but Bronzong isn't a special attacker, so it's not worried. Getting burned on the Machagacho would stink, but now we're at max defense boost with Bronzong, and we can Dragon Tail out their Archaludon in order to get rid of their defense boost, and the opponent, seeing as how they really don't have a great way over Bronzong at this point, just decides to forfeit, as if I had to guess, they probably didn't bring Pelipper this game, they probably brought Ursaluna or Incineroar, and neither of those Pokemon are taking a body press from Bronzong at this point. Next up, we have a team with a pretty good spread of Mons here. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from this team, but the only thing on this team that really threatens Bronzong is the Meowscarada if it has the knockoff in order to do super effective damage to Bronzong, or if the Goodra was able to stack body presses before Bronzong, then that could be a bit of a problem. But the opponent immediately decides to lead Electabuzz, and the Weezing here is we lead Garganacl and the Altaria. We immediately retreat into Volcarona to not take a super effective fairy type attack from the Weezing, and they manage to speed drop Garganacl with the Electro Web, but we Salt Cure their Weezing here as they decide to set up Sun for whatever reason, but I use that Sun in order to get good overheat damage into their Electabuzz, and their Electabuzz is just continuing to speed drop just Garganacl here because we're Cover Cloak on Volcarona, and with the Salt Cure we're doing good damage into Electabuzz, and they actually swap Porygon 2 in here. I was maybe expecting to see the cat, and they actually just reveal that they did not bring Meowscarada this game, which makes the Bronzong endgame a lot easier, and we just recover health with the Garganacl here. Now we bring in Altaria in order to negate their Sun, as they decide to go Terra Ground with Porygon 2 here, which is going to make our Bronzong endgame a little bit more difficult, because if they bring in their Weezing to Nullify or Levitate, then Bronzong can be hit by the Ground-type Terra Blast on the Porygon 2. And they do go for that Ground-type Terra Blast, but Altaria is immune to it because it is a Flying type, and we bring in Bronzong here, and Neutralizing Gas comes out, which means that Sun is now back up again, and we tried Breaking Swiping in order to lower the opposing Pokemon's attack, but that does not happen, and they get Ice Beam into the Altaria, and I just Roost with Altaria because I wanted to get the whatchamacallit, they double attack Altaria, but Altaria lives the Ice Beam because it roosted, and we resist the Heat Wave on Altaria. And Bronzong does take some good damage in the Sun here, but we get the Gyro Ball into Weezing, and doesn't do as much damage into the Weezing as I would have hoped, but now it's pretty close to a KO, and we can bring back in Volcarona here in order to live, as we roost with Altaria, and we catch the Terra Blast because it's only neutral on Volcarona. And they decide to swap out Porygon 2 for Goodra here, and they hard swap into Electabuzz. And I tried to Will-O-Wisp the Porygon 2 in order to lower the power of if its Terra Blast went to a physical. If its Terra Blast turned into a physical move, then the burn would lower the power of the Terra Blast. But as you saw, we Fire Spinned out their Electabuzz in order to take down all of its health, so we just need to try and chip away at this Porygon 2 kind of slowly. We Breaking Swipe in order to lower both of these Pokemon attack stats so that their attack is not higher. They do Dragon Claw crit Altari here, and they get a Trick Room with their Porygon too. But now we swap in Garganacl to hopefully catch an Ice Beam, and we do in fact catch the Ice Beam. And Dragon Claw tries to take out Volcarona, but Volcarona lives, and we get the Overheat into Porygon 2, taking it out. So now it's just Weezing and Goodra left for them, and with only Weezing and Goodra left, our Bronzong endgame is pretty safe, all things considered. They do Heat Wave Burn Garganacl here, which is because Garganacl's ability is not currently active, so you don't see that every day. We get the Citrus Berry off with Garganacl, and we Gyro Ball all of the Weezing's remaining health here as we just recover with Garganacl. As with the Salt Cure and the Burn, the Goodra needs to have something like Rest in order to stay in the game. It's very unlikely that it had Rest, so Goodra just gets knocked out at the end of the turn, and we win. Here we have a very purple team, as Ceruledge and Didi and Gengar are all purple things, and then Snorlax and Excalibur are more kind of blue, and then Blood Moon Ursaluna is just kind of here. This is the actual Blood Moon Ursaluna. So we lead Bronzong because I figured Bronzong could handle most things on this team as long as it can kind of sidestep the Ceruledge here, because both of our moves for hitting Ceruledge aren't that great, as it's not affected by the body press that we build up, and the Gyro Ball really isn't going to do much damage to it, but we can, as you'll see on this first turn, we get Super Sweet Syrup to activate, and we immediately swap into Garganacl to try and stop the Ceruledge from just getting the Bitter Blade here. They immediately Swords Dance as Bronzong gets up the Trick Room after Terra Firing in order to slow down the Ceruledge, and we get up an Iron Defense with Bronzong as Ceruledge gets off another attack boost. So at this point it's pretty important for us to have our defense boost on the Bronzong in order to take whatever hit the Ceruledge throws at us, and it does throw the Bitter Blade, and it does do quite a bit considering that that's a resisted hit. But we just Body Press away their DD here, and we get the Salt Cure into their Ceruledge, doing some super effective damage as they decide to close combat into Garganacl, which is going to lower their defense, but now they're being Salt Cured, but they have the Bitter Blade in order to heal themselves, so we have to be careful with that. We just flat out Body Press into their Ursaluna as they Bitter Blade into our Dipplin, and Dipplin lives it because it's Eviolite, so good job Dipplin. We also get to Dragon Tail out their Ceruledge, which means that we do lose the Salt Cure on the Ceruledge, so it might be a little bit more difficult to deal with, but they also lose their attack boost, which is pretty much the big thing. As now Trick Room is over, and their Excalibur decides to go Terra Dragon here as we just protect Dipplin because I didn't want it getting taken out as they tried to use Bitter Blade to pick off Dipplin. And we Body Press Excalibur, and it lives because of the Terrestrialization. And they go for the Glaive Rush, which does do a pretty good amount of damage into Bronzong, and they Bitter Blade in order to finish off Dipplin. But Body Press is going to finish off their Excalibur, and we bring in Superior here because I brought it as the last Mon, obviously. We protect so that we can catch a Bitter Blade, and we get Gyro Ball damage into Ceruledge, chipping it for a bit, and the Leaf Storm almost picks off the Ceruledge, not quite enough there. But they Bitter Blade us back, and that takes all of our health and heals Ceruledge up quite a bit. But now we are trying to outrace their Bitter Blades, and they Shadow Sneak there for whatever reason, not quite sure why. But from the looks of things, based on how much damage the Bitter Blade is doing, we still outpace them with our Gyro Balls. And even if they decided to try and Swords Dance up, the Gyro Ball more than likely would have outpaced them and any healing that they could have gotten off of the Bitter Blade. But that would have been a great game to use this strategy that this team is actually based around in order to Syrup Bomb into Bronzong to make it slower so that the Gyro Ball did more damage to the Ceruledge. Unfortunately, I just don't think that we had any great turns to use that strategy this time around. Next up, we have a team that has a pretty good spread of Mons, and I don't think I include this battle because it was necessarily a great battle to show off Dipplin in this one, so you can skip this next one if you really don't want to see that much Dipplin gameplay. But there's actually an interesting interaction that I wasn't quite sure of how it worked, but as you'll see, Slowking and King Gambit hit the field here, maybe in order to try and check our Superior, as I wanted to use Superior with the Terra Water in order to try and roll a lot of the Pokemon that are on this team. So we immediately do that by Terra Wattering our Superior, and we get off the Leaf Storm into King Gambit in order to increase our special attack, and we T-Fog in order to get some evasion on Superior in case anything attacked into Superior, and we do immediately dodge the Sludge Bomb from the Slowking as the King Gambit goes for the Kowtow. But now we bring in Volcarona because I wanted to use Volcarona in order to aid Superior a little bit more, but they actually have Calm Mind on their Slowking here, making things a little bit more drastic. They decided to tear it a Ghost for whatever reason here, but we get Leaf Storm into King Gambit, which doesn't quite kill it, but we burn the King Gambit, so that mitigates that problem a little bit more. And they use Sludge Bomb into Volcarona here, but now they get to bring in the Dragapult, who clicks Dragon Darts, and you'll see there, we didn't protect with Superior, so both Dragon Darts should have hit into Volcarona and Superior, and I was not quite sure why it didn't, but I realized that because we had the evasion, that Dragon Darts actually hit the evasion chance and then hit Volcarona. So unfortunately we lost Volcarona there, who I was planning to Struggle Bug this turn in order to lower the power of the Slowking's hit that would go into Superior, and then Giga Drain off some health so that we were hopefully at full health here. As we went to full health, which means we lost out on some health, and the Sludge Bomb does more damage into Superior, making it so that Superior probably would die to another Darts, but we protect with Superior on this turn, and we get the Darts into both Garganacl that time, but that time it's on purpose, and Sulkier is thankfully able to take out the rest of the health on Dragapult, and they protect with Slowking here, and we just Giga Drain away the Porygon 2, because it's the biggest threat at this point in my opinion, unless they have recovery on the Slowking, but at this point the opponent gives up, because we can just use the Garganacl to Sulkier into the Slowking to chip away at it over time, and we have the Water Terra Blast on Slowking, which I don't think we actually got to reveal, but it would still do massive damage to their Slowking even with their special defense boost. And lastly, we have what looks to be a Cloyster Shell Smash team, with also the option to go for the Trick Room mode, as they have the Raichu, Incineroar, and the Amoonguss for their supports. So this could be a little bit of a dangerous one. I decided to just lead Volcarona and Altaria in order to maybe get a White Herb on the Cloyster to make it so that they keep their special defense boost. But we immediately get a Will-O-Wisp off into Cloyster, as if it was going to damage Volcarona, it would be doing it using Rock Blast. So that prepares us for the next turn here, where we can use Volcarona's Terra in order to dodge a Rock Blast, but they do get off the Shell Smash, and they fake out into the right Pokemon here, because Volcarona is the one holding the Covert Cloak. But now we bring in Bronzong, just in case they went for an Ice-type move into the Altaria here, but they do in fact go for the Rock Blast into Volcarona, so it's good that we use the Terra Dragon in order to live it, and we get the Overheat into Cloyster, and Cloyster did not have a lot of special defense to start with, but the fact that it has a special defense drop is definitely not helping it here, as they just get a Nuzzle into Bronzong, which is perfectly okay with me. But now that we've gotten rid of the Cloyster, unless they really get a lot of damage in with the knockoff on Incineroar here, we're in a really good spot to just get defense boost on Bronzong, and then set up Trick Room, and then start sweeping the opponent. Another problem would be Raichu, since Raichu is still a special attacker, but I'm not too threatened by the Raichu right now. They fake out Volcarona, and we get the Struggle Bug into both Pokemon here, lowering both their special attacks, and they Nuzzle Volcarona, which they do crit, but Volcarona is still Covert Cloak, so we don't get paralyzed by it. And we just double Rage Powder here. We do live the Volt Switch from Raichu, which is good, because we get to redirect the knockoff into Volcarona this turn as it goes down. And we get up the Trick Room, and we get to bring in Dipplin for free, which is extra nice. Bronzong unfortunately takes the Paraturn, but we get the Side Syrup Bomb into Bronzong to make it slower. And they Pollen Puff into Dipplin, and they Flare Blitz into Dipplin, which Dipplin did not like that much, but now Bronzong is slowly getting slower, so it'll do more Gyro Ball damage into the Amoonguss, but we just get to get the free Body Press into Incineroar, KOing it here, as Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss kind of falls on deaf ears as the Dipplin protects. And I think it's at this point that the opponent just decides to leave the battle, as they pretty much use the same move every time after this. They fake out Dipplin here, and we Gyro Ball the Raichu, which really should have been Body Press, but I figured they might try redirecting into Amoonguss, and we just need the damage into Raichu here. But they keep going for Fake Out, and they also keep going for Spore with Amoonguss, which they can't Spore either of the Pokemon that we have on the field right now, because one of them is Grass type and one of them is Paralyzed. I swapped into Altaria just in case they revealed, like, Thunder or something into the Bronzong here. We just need Bronzong alive in order to beat Amoonguss at this point, so we could have swapped, we could have sacked Altaria there. But now that we have Bronzong in a point, the auto thing just automatically decides to give me the win because they lose due to inactivity there. But my plan was that we were going to Side Syrup Bomb the Bronzong again in order to make sure that we could get maximum damage on the Gyro Ball into Amoonguss. And with the 150 base power Gyro Ball, we were definitely good to beat up Amoonguss there in the end game. So yeah, that was the Dipplin Syrup Bomb team, and honestly, this strategy is pretty gimmicky right now, but I could definitely see them introducing a Pokemon next generation that makes this strategy, like, really good, because all you need for the strategy next generation is the Applin line, which I think is pretty likely since they only introduced Hydrapple in the second DLC of Scarlet and Violet. And then you just need, like, a slow Gyro Ball Mon, which there's probably going to be at least 2 or 3 of those whenever the game drops for Generation 10. And then a Contrary Mon is less likely to be in the base game, but there will probably be at least one. You don't necessarily need Superior, it's just that Superior is probably the best one to use the strategy with, because you resist the side Syrup Bomb and you're the fastest one, so you really benefit from the speed boost. But whenever this team gets like a 4th Pokemon that really benefits from being hit by the Syrup Bomb, I could definitely see this being a real strategy. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.